Imagine being laughed at by your classmates, mocked for having the weakest ability, told you'd never amount to anything. That was Su Jingming's life. His so-called power was nothing more than a pathetic spark of electricity, barely enough to light a bulb. Everyone said he was destined to fail, but what they didn't know was that hidden inside him was a secret that would shake the entire nation. The moment the martial exam began, the sky itself split open with violet lightning. An S-rank ability that hadn't appeared in years was finally unleashed. One strike from his spear tore through monsters like paper. His weak spark transformed into the legendary Violet Sky Divine Thunder, a power so overwhelming, even rank 2 Beast Kings fell before him. In just hours, he climbed from being an E-rank nobody to the #1 contender, crushing records, shocking rivals, and leaving the entire Federation stunned. This isn't just the story of a comeback. It's the rise of a prodigy who went from trash to the strongest in the world, and this is only the beginning. His sister stood out at school, celebrated for her stunning looks and praised by all as exceptionally gifted. Unlike others, he was known by everyone as the ultimate freeloader. This happened solely because the power he gained was nothing more than a feeble, low-level spark of electricity. His classmates ridiculed him, predicting that he would one day be stuck at home, tending pigs and relying on his family's support. To them, he truly carried the rare and fabled gift of the twin ability physique. In addition, he had gained an extraordinary ability known as the Violet Sky Divine Thunder. A separate realm unfolded alongside. Human society progressed along a similar path, yet in this world, enormous and fearsome creatures wandered across the landscape. In order to resist their adversaries, humanity began to develop extraordinary abilities. As each person reached maturity, they discovered a power unique to themselves. Individuals discovered that these abilities were organized into 9 distinct levels, with the majority awakening to powers that fell within the F to D range. His ability, though, ranked at the lowest tier, barely a spark above nothing, classified as level 1 weak electricity. Despite straining himself to his absolute limits, he found that the power he produced was still less effective than that of an inexpensive stun baton. His classmates constantly mocked and looked down on him because of that. The girl who had cared for him since childhood encouraged him to shift his focus to liberal arts for the college entrance exam, hoping he might find a peaceful and normal life that way. Within the vast N nation, advanced studies were split into 2 distinct paths, one focusing on the arts and literature, the other centered on combat and physical skills. All students in the martial track had to enter assigned areas during the national exam, where they would have to battle deadly monsters. Because of this, those whose abilities were ranked below D were encouraged to pursue liberal arts instead, which essentially meant they would give up using their powers by choice. In contrast, individuals who found success along the martial path gained entry into ability institutes. Through years spent honing their skills under the guidance of mentors, they earned the opportunity to surpass the no-rank stage and achieve the status of genuine ranked awakeners. Many formidable figures had emerged from this very process. Hoped he would pick liberal arts, worried that the dangers of the martial exam could claim his life. However, the promise of a stable career offered little comfort, as he would remain defenseless if confronted by a beast. His parents had lost their lives when a wave of beasts swept through and attacked their city. Ultimately, he ended up signing his name on the martial track team registration form. From that moment forward, he spent nearly every waking hour inside the training hall, dedicating himself completely to perfecting his skills. Since the day he first opened his eyes to this new world, he had selected the spear to be his weapon of choice. Despite dedicating 2.5 years to training, he was unable to advance beyond the beginner level with no signs of improvement. At that moment, he let out a sigh, weighed down by thoughts of what his future might hold. A bright blue digital window abruptly appeared before his eyes. He jolted awake, startled by the sudden appearance of the long-awaited system. After unwrapping the novice gift pack, he discovered that he had gained an S-rank ability along with 200 ability points. He felt overwhelming joy, realizing that in all of Great, an awakener of S-rank status emerged only once every 2.5 years. Whenever an individual like that emerged, the most prestigious academies would compete fiercely to recruit him, offering abundant resources and support to help him become the leading talent of his era. With a simple gesture, he caused the ability gift pack to open before him. A chime sounded as the system informed him that he had earned an S-rank ability called Violet Sky, Divine Thunder. Above the city, the sky grew ominously dark as flashes of violet lightning split the night apart. The city's 3rd Legion promptly initiated the most advanced defense measures upon receiving the alert. The frightening storm caused many people to worry that a mighty lightning creature was on the verge of attacking. He gazed at his palm with excitement, confident that the S-rank ability, Violet Sky Divine Thunder, would allow him to excel in the upcoming martial exam and stand out among the competitors. He lifted his hand once more, activating the ability point pack. The system clarified that ability points were awarded for defeating beasts and could be used to enhance both levels and skills. Excitement surged through his thoughts as he considered the challenge ahead. Battling monsters to gain strength seemed straightforward and fierce, exactly the kind of approach he preferred. The system panel revealed that he possessed 2 fundamental abilities, the basic spear technique and the basic lightning gale slash. Abilities, at their core, emerged when the strength of the human body combined with the power of the spirit. Once he distributed points to each of the attributes, a comforting wave coursed through his veins, revitalizing his blood and focusing his mind until his thoughts became crisp and lucid. As he glanced over his panel, it became clear to him that his current strength was more than enough to qualify for the country's most prestigious ability academy. All his thoughts revolved around the question of whether he would emerge as the highest scorer in province. Recalling the prodigies who had received expert guidance from a young age, he found himself doubting his own abilities. Motivated by this idea, he chose to evaluate how far he had come by heading over to the martial hall. He lifted his spear by flicking it upward from the ground with his foot. With practiced skill, he twirled the weapon between his fingers, creating a brilliant display as the spear swept through the air. At that moment, the door flew open with a sharp, echoing crash. A team of firefighters entered the scene, their movements hurried and filled with a sense of urgency. The individuals stated that someone had contacted them about a fire occurring at this location. He hurriedly gestured with his hands, trying to clarify that the sudden burst of energy was only a result of his ongoing ability practice. The firefighters looked at one another and breathed out in relief, surprised that all the chaos had been caused by nothing more than a student's rehearsal. As they looked over the destroyed training room, they couldn't help but think that causing such chaos during practice meant this kid was truly remarkable. The neighbors living below approached with worried expressions, asking if the fire had been handled safely. Jingming offered a reassuring smile, explaining that Uncle Yang had already resolved the issue. Hearing this, the neighbors let out a sigh of relief and expressed how glad they were. Noticing Jingming's attire, they commented that he must be on his way to Martial Hall for training, and remarked with admiration that he was still practicing even the day before the big exam. In this world, those seeking to rise from an awakener to a genuine ability user needed to strengthen both their bodies and minds to grow stronger. For this reason, martial halls with trainers and practice areas began to appear. However, many families lacked the resources to pay for a private training space. The martial arts community is recognized, and as the most renowned martial hall chains in the region. Hall required its students to pay a yearly fee of $100,000, attracting those from affluent backgrounds, whereas Thunder Hall stood out as the sole option available to high school students without any cost. As soon as entered the hall, his eyes were drawn to someone he recognized right away. His cousin Tang Kai stood before him. He approached her and offered a friendly greeting, wondering aloud about her reasons for visiting Thunder Hall. Tang Kai clarified that her reason for being present was simply to support a friend. Gave a silent nod, choosing not to ask any more questions. He understood the situation and decided to leave, mentioning that he was on his way to the training room and allowed the other person to return to their task. As Tang Chi exited, a faint frown appeared on her face as she sensed something unusual about the man. Yao, standing nearby, leaned in and quietly asked Tang Chi who the stranger was, noting that he looked quite attractive. Tang Kai explained that the person was her cousin, who was also a senior preparing to take the martial exam the following day. At that moment, a boy strolled over and started to joke with, suggesting that her curiosity might mean she had a crush. Openly confessed that with a face like his, as long as he wasn't weak, having him as a boyfriend would be quite something. Tang Kai, on the other hand, quickly dismissed the excitement by cautioning everyone that there was little to be impressed about, since the person in question had only managed to awaken an E-rank ability. The boy let out a laugh, amused by someone with just an E-rank ability still choosing to enter the martial exam. He had to admit, that kind of courage was impressive. Meanwhile, Tang Kai released a weary sigh, feeling that courage didn't always equal good judgment. To him, the dangers involved were simply too high, and he would have preferred if the attempt wasn't made at all. Noticing that the atmosphere was becoming tense, Ye gently pulled on Tang Chi's arm, trying to lighten the situation. She reminded everyone that their purpose for visiting Thunder Hall was simply to explore, hoping to steer the group back to their original plan. Tang Kai agreed with a nod, acknowledging that she had attended Bear Hall for all 3 years of high school and was only now visiting Thunder for the first time. She thought that taking some time to unwind before exams would benefit both her mind and body, and decided they should head out. At the same time, stepped into the examination chamber. Gripping his spear, he noticed how much less weight it seemed to have. He wondered if the change was due to his own body becoming more powerful. Despite the exam being scheduled for the next day, there was no longer time to search for a superior weapon. Determined, he chose to measure his maximum strength without relying on any enhancements. He let out a slow, measured breath. With both hands gripping the spear tightly, he drove it ahead with force. A loud bang echoed as the bullet tore straight through the metal target. The training room's walls were constructed from basic memory metal, allowing them to mend themselves whenever any damage remained within their capacity to recover. The display lit up with a bright flash, showing the numbers 321 car. His lips curled into a subtle smile. His physical power had now increased to twice what it once was. For comparison, even the most powerful regular Awakener rarely achieved a score as high as 100. Afterward, he chose to experiment with the strength of the divine thunder that came from the violet sky. Electric currents erupted from his body, crackling with intense energy. The panel showed a car with the number 3021. He stood in disbelief, recognizing the overwhelming strength typical of an S-rank ability. Normally, someone with a first-rank power could only achieve a force equivalent to 1,000 car. Yet somehow, despite not even entering the first rank, he was already demonstrating abilities comparable to those of a mid-level first-rank user. Yet that still did not mark the extent of his abilities. His ultimate attack combined overwhelming physical power, enhanced abilities, and advanced combat skills into a single, devastating strike. He tightened his hold on the spear, focusing his energy as celestial thunder surged through him. He directed a powerful lightning gale slash toward the testing apparatus, releasing its energy in a swift, electrifying arc. As soon as the spear tip made contact, it vibrated fiercely and let out a thunderous roar. In the next instant, called out for the group to break formation. A powerful explosion burst forth from the tip of the spear, radiating outwards and engulfing everything around it. Meanwhile, those gathered in the main hall noticed the whole structure shaking beneath their feet, with a few of them suspecting that an earthquake might be occurring. Almost everyone sharing the floor with struggled to stay upright. The air crackled with powerful energy waves, unmistakable evidence of someone wielding an ability, and an onlooker couldn't help but marvel at the scene. His brow furrowed with concern as she remembered that this floor was supposed to be set aside for high school students. Typically, anyone who awakened their abilities early would practice at Bear Hall instead. The boy standing next to her speculated quietly, thinking that perhaps a particularly strong person had come to train, or maybe a new high schooler with special abilities had recently appeared. While the two of them guessed at the situation, Tang Kai subtly interrupted their conversation, suggesting that they should find out the truth on their own. Energy surges were definitely originating from a close location. Before they managed to walk far, the group encountered. Tang Kai appeared a bit uneasy and inquired if was leaving for home so soon. In response, confirmed with a nod, explaining that he planned to head back early to get some extra work done. Upon hearing those words, Tang Kai offered some reassurance, wishing him success on the upcoming exam while reminding him to be careful. As their conversation continued, the boy suddenly cut in with a sharp tone, dismissing any further pleasantries and insisting that the energy spike had indeed originated from their current location. The group came to a halt in front of a doorway, believing this was the place they had been searching for. As they entered the room, their eyes grew wide with disbelief at the chaotic scene that greeted them, leaving them silently wondering what could have possibly occurred in that place. Stared in shock at the scene before him, his finger trembling as he pointed toward the damage. He found it hard to believe even memory metal had been punctured. The sheer power needed for such a feat amazed him. He wondered if someone in City High could really possess that much strength. The boy standing next to her examined the scratches along the wall, and with a calm tone, explained that it couldn't have been a high school student. He mentioned that lingering hints of aggressive power remained, suggesting that someone with a rank 2 ability had probably lost their way to this floor and tried out their strength there. Upon hearing those words, the group let out a collective sigh of relief, their tense expressions softening as understanding passed between them. They silently agreed. It was unthinkable for any student to accomplish such a feat. Even the most talented individuals in the entire capital wouldn't be capable of this, let alone someone from City. The idea seemed completely out of the question. His thoughts spun with daring speculation. Moments earlier, had been the only one to pass by this spot. Wondered if could be the mysterious individual. Perhaps he had been concealing extraordinary abilities all along, biding his time to astonish everyone during the exam the next day. Her comments sparked a wave of sarcastic replies. Some dismissed her, claiming she had spent too much time reading web novels and was imagining unlikely scenarios where someone acted powerless only to surprise everyone later. Others insisted such a feat was unrealistic, arguing that even faking strength needed a certain minimum ability. They pointed out that he was only an E-rank awakener, and if he managed to score 300 on the test, that would already be extraordinary for someone at his level. The boy with short hair explained that both corridors provided exits to the outdoors. He reasoned that whoever had caused the strange disturbance likely escaped through the opposite hallway. Then he turned to Tang Kai, silently asking for his opinion. Tang Kai responded with uncertainty, her tone soft and unsure. Deep inside, she recognized that the marks on Mars closely resembled wounds from spear thrusts, which made her question whether was truly being arrogant by entering the martial exam. The day of the exam arrived in the blink of an eye. Buses filled with candidates continuously pulled up outside the venue. A group of students, carrying weapons across their backs, exchanged greetings as they gathered near the entrance. Shortly after, disembarked from a bus, firmly gripping his spear. Several intrigued students approached the fence and gazed in with wide eyes. They realized this was the location for their exam. One of them noticed a horned rhinoceros and was shocked by its presence. In previous years, the exams had only included creatures like shadow cats and iron spiders, making this year's challenge seem especially extreme. As the group whispered among themselves, an individual approached with a mocking expression and scoffed at them, questioning what was so special about a horned rhino. The newcomer implied that if they struggled with such a creature, they would remain worthless at an ability university, even if they barely managed to get admitted. Upon hearing the remark, arched his eyebrow in surprise, silently questioning who could boast so boldly. In response, his friend leaned in closer and explained that the sword in question belonged to, specifying that it was Joe from First High who was being discussed. Rumors circulated that Joe possessed a B-rank power known as Swift Gale, and he had already advanced from having no rank to achieving rank 1 status among ability users. Gave a slight smile when he heard the comment, recognizing that this was the person everyone expected to win the top spot in this year's martial exam. Deep down, he wondered which of them was actually the stronger one. A few moments passed before a powerful voice echoed above the commotion, outside the testing area. The chief commander overseeing the city martial exam that year called for the candidates' attention. Before starting the event, he prepared to remind everyone of the most important rules. The test was scheduled to begin precisely at 9 in the morning and would conclude 12 hours later, at 9 in the evening. Participants were informed that the location for the exam was the devastated town situated just behind the speaker. Like in past years, the space is sectioned off into 4 parts: the outer ring, the middle zone, the inner ring, and the core sector. Defeating monsters of various kinds and levels would grant varying point values. More powerful creatures would reward higher scores. The core sector resembled extra credit problems on an exam, designed specifically for the most skilled students to tackle. People were warned not to risk everything in pursuit of those elusive points. As explained the situation, reflected on how, just 9 days earlier, he would never have considered venturing beyond the safety of the outer ring. Yet now, he realized he needed to set his sights on reaching the inner ring, and perhaps even the very center. The organizers informed everyone that exam supplies would be handed out next. They instructed the students to receive their materials from their homeroom teacher, one after another, in an orderly fashion. While distributing the materials, the teacher clarified that there were a total of 3 items. The equipment included a smartwatch designed to track both the quantity and species of monsters defeated, instantly updating the user's score. Alongside that, there was a rugged tactical backpack stocked with 2 energy bars, an energy drink, and a disposable, enough provisions to last half a day. Lastly, there was a protective sphere that, when triggered, formed an electrified barrier strong enough to keep standard creatures at bay. Once the conversation ended, the teacher's worry didn't fade. Instead, he quietly motioned for to step to the side. He reminded that activating the safety sphere would immediately terminate his participation in the exam, but insisted that safety was far more important than the test. Responded with a gentle smile, assuring his teacher that he understood and expressing his gratitude. Right before he stepped inside, hurried over and called out to, asking if he was still without a group and inviting him to join theirs. Even, who had only just discovered her C-rank ability, promised to support once they entered. Several members of the group quickly voiced their disagreement. While they could understand the class representative's kindness in ordinary situations, this was an exam with strict rules. Each team could only have 5 members. Including anyone extra would put their own chances of success at risk. GS quickly retorted, reminding the other person that they had made an agreement, and now the other seemed to be withdrawing from it. Both individuals refused to back down, their stubbornness unwavering. No one had expected that he would truly arrive. Determined, she resolved not to be burdened by anyone who couldn't keep up. Upon hearing those words, reached out and pulled backward, preventing him from losing his temper. Old, who served as the class representative, was thanked for his support, but the speaker insisted on entering alone, urging the others to remain with their group. Noticing the determination in his expression, the others felt they had no choice but to agree, silently urging him to stay safe. The pair who had rejected him didn't waste any time and swiftly led away. Deciding to move on, they chose to join forces with instead. Once the others had departed, a subtle smile appeared on his face. He spoke with unwavering confidence, declaring that he could achieve high scores on his own, even in her absence. As countless drones filled the sky with their constant humming, the announcer's powerful voice echoed across the area. The martial arts examination of 7 City for the year 2030 was now. High-tech drones for monitoring and tracking had been activated, and the live broadcast of the event had commenced. In a heartbeat, throngs of candidates surged into the crumbling ruins, their voices echoing with fierce determination. Among the uproar, several participants shouted their ambitions as they sprinted forward, declaring their dreams of reaching Ability University, and vowing that this would be the year everyone remembered their names. His cousin Tangkai stood among the group. Among them was Joe, known by many as the favorite to become the top scorer. Trailed close to the group ahead, his heart pounding with anticipation as he approached the martial exam that awaited him. The moment he stepped into the testing area, his smartwatch screen illuminated with a new alert. The system the candidate as a senior from Class 5 at City Second High School, with the examination ID number 178. The current live rankings placed Joe from City First High in the lead with 7 points. Following closely in second was Lee Sun, also from City First High, who had earned 5 points. In third place stood, representing the same school, with a total of 4 points. Looked over the data and quietly acknowledged that First High's strongest competitor was already out hunting beasts. Realizing this, he understood it was now his moment to take action. Realizing that the core region remained a long distance away, he decided to make his way directly toward it. After sprinting for some time, abruptly stopped in his tracks, motionless. In front of him, another student was sprawled on the ground, surrounded by a spreading puddle of blood, struggling to stay alive. Upon witnessing the situation unfolding in front of him, let out a weary sigh. The severity of the wounds was apparent. The victim hadn't managed to use the safety sphere in time. It became clear to why his teacher had repeatedly urged him to withdraw from the exam. If not for awakening an S-rank ability, the character realized their fate would likely have mirrored that unfortunate outcome. During the martial exam, regrets held no place, as each opportunity carried its own risks. Few individuals were ever given the chance to challenge their destiny. With this understanding in mind, swiftly tapped his watch, reaching out to the logistics team for assistance. At that moment, footsteps could be heard drawing nearer, their echoes filling the air. Just moments after, a dark creature emerged silently from the shadows of the corner. Felt a wave of dread wash over him as he realized the creature had intentionally spared that student, using them as a lure to draw in unsuspecting people who ventured too near. The entire situation had been a carefully crafted trap set by it. The creature moved forward at a deliberate pace, closing the distance with each measured step. Suddenly, and without any sign, the creature sprang directly toward him. Fortune favored, as his increased power allowed him to swiftly retreat just in time to evade the attack by a slim margin. As he gazed at the creature, he quickly assessed its features. Claws built for speed and precision, along with jaws capable of delivering a bite force surpassing 1,000 kilograms. There could be no mistaking it. This was the infamous rookie killer everyone spoke of. Creatures earned the name Fierce due to the wild and intimidating presence they carried, a force so strong it could overwhelm and break the spirit of those they hunted. Most awakeners, when confronted by these creatures for the first time, were rumored to buckle beneath their overwhelming presence, barely managing to use a fraction of their power. Many even surrendered before the battle could begin. Wealthy families frequently employed bodyguards with special abilities to escort their children into the wilderness, helping them gain experience in battling wild creatures from a young age. Had never experienced that kind of ease, he stood before a beast for the very first time in his life. While he was still processing this realization, the shadow cat sprang at him once more. The creature's sharp claws hovered just an instant from tearing into him. Held his spear with a firm grasp as sparks of electricity danced along its length. Without hesitation, he drove his weapon upward with force, delivering a single, fatal strike that ended the shadow cat's life instantly. He noticed that the aura everyone talked about seemed to have no impact on him whatsoever. After flinging the creature's body away, a mechanical voice echoed in the air, announcing that the had been defeated. The message also revealed that the beast was unranked and rewarded 3 additional ability points. Beasts fell into a ranking system that ranged from rank 1 up to rank 9. Any creature that did not reach rank 1 was labeled as unranked and was seen as equal in strength to human awakeners. Upon noticing the notification, realized that defeating Beast Grant would allow him to gain ability points and become stronger. However, he also understood that unranked beasts did not offer many rewards. Because their aura no longer affected him, remaining in the outer ring seemed useless, so he decided he needed to move quickly toward the middle zone. As he traveled, his system repeatedly hymned of his achievements, announcing that he had defeated a beast, an unranked, and awarded him 5 additional ability points. The defeat of the Iron High Boar granted an additional 5 unranked ability points. After defeating a series of beasts, let out a deep sigh. He realized he had gathered a substantial number of points, but genuine battle experience still eluded him. Although the Violet Sky Divine Thunder easily defeated the unranked creatures in a single blow, knew that depending on this technique alone would not help him truly improve his abilities. As ability rank increased, so did the energy it consumed. Using Violet Sky, Divine Thunder at its maximum would exhaust him in less than an hour, while his former E-rank weak electricity had been sustainable for over 3 hours. The martial exam stretched on for 12 long hours, demanding careful energy management before anyone could even enter the core zone. Knowing this, remained disciplined throughout the journey, relying solely on his spear skills to defeat the beasts he encountered. Each victory added to his growing experience in real combat. After some time had passed, he noticed a rhinoceros with prominent horns standing in the distance. The creature fixed its gaze on him, and without hesitation, sprang forward in a ferocious attack. The object rushed nearer with increasing speed, launched himself upward, twisting his body twice midair before landing gracefully. Clutching his spear tightly in both hands, he thrust it directly at the rhino's forehead. The creature slammed onto the earth with a heavy thud as it touched down gracefully, his movements almost showing off his skill. At that instant, he noticed his ability to slay monsters had become more precise than before. He wondered if his mastery of the spear had already reached a new level. He hurriedly summoned his status screen. His stats displayed: physique at 141, vitality at 160, and spirit also at 160. Listed under his skills were spear technique at the intermediate level and the lightning gale slash move. He had accumulated 256 ability points. As he had expected, his proficiency with the spear had progressed to the intermediate stage. It was obvious that using the spear in actual battles had contributed the most to his improvement. Having already mastered intermediate spear techniques, he felt a commanding confidence over his weapon. Wondering what new abilities might emerge if he advanced even more, he promptly chose to upgrade his spear skills without a second thought. In that moment, a multitude of shapes raced across his thoughts. His eyes grew large with surprise. A constant stream of complex spear techniques flooded into his mind. He struggled to hold back his excitement, eager to encounter another creature that would challenge his abilities. At the same time, Lynch, who served as the class representative, walked through the area accompanied by members of the UN squad. The sudden sight of a figure bearing a striking resemblance to and appearing to attack caused a jolt of shock. Her teammates reacted with disbelief, dismissing the class representative's concerns. They insisted she must be imagining things, arguing that there was no possibility it could be him. Given his lack of strength, they believed showing up here would be the same as asking for trouble. Paused at their remarks, uncertainty creeping in as she questioned whether she had truly been wrong. Still, the figure she had glimpsed from behind bore an uncanny resemblance to. At that moment, a voice from within the group urged everyone to take a look at the horned rhino. Ching moved nearer, studying the scene intently. He noticed the body was still warm, with blood that hadn't yet dried, indicating the person had passed away only moments earlier. Deep injuries marked the head, and judging by the precise holes, deduced they were caused by some kind of pole weapon. He suspected a spear had delivered the deadly blow. Her complexion drained of color as realization struck her. She wondered if the person she had seen before truly was. One of the teammates shot a scornful look, clearly doubting him. He couldn't believe anyone would think had taken down the rhino, since that kind of monster could only be defeated alone by an E-rank awakened. To him, the idea that was responsible was simply out of the question. Someone in the group proposed that instead of guessing, they could simply look up his score ranking to find the answer. Lynching opened and noticed that in 46th place was from City's second high with 256 points. Shocked to see his name, she let out a gasp, realizing it truly was him. Her teammates stared in disbelief. The idea that could have made it into the top 50 seemed impossible to them. They couldn't accept it and suspected it must just be someone with a similar name. They wondered how someone ranked only as a first-level awakener could possess so much power. Outside, the onlookers gathered, murmuring with excitement as their eyes stayed fixed on the massive display. First High continued to lead the rankings, nearly claiming all of the top 10 spots. Among them, Joe stood out, having already reached 412 points. It seemed unlikely anyone would surpass his score. For years, City had been without a provincial winner, but perhaps this year would be different. Seated in the spectator section, who led City's education bureau, let out a soft laugh. He took pride in Joe, the city's star competitor. Joe's mastery of the swift gale power made him a force to be reckoned with. Even when facing challengers from the entire province, felt confident that Joe would keep up. In his opinion, Joe had a strong chance of ranking among the top 10 both in the city and the wider province. Old continued speaking, expressing his satisfaction with First High's achievements, and noting that Third High had at last managed to get a student into the top 10. The principals of both schools smiled proudly at his words and hurried to express their gratitude crediting Chief Jean's leadership for their success and assuring him of their continued dependence on his support. Shifted his gaze, his face clouded with displeasure, and directed his attention to the principal of Second High. He pointed out that their school had to improve, noting critically that even their top student was placed only 18th in the rankings. Principal Yao of Second High gritted his teeth in frustration, noting that only 8 students from their school ranked among the top 50. As he thought of Li Ming, Yang, and he silently urged these students to bring honor to the school. A realization suddenly dawned on him. He couldn't recall ever hearing the name before and questioned whether this person was even a member of the elite class. Behind the student, the homeroom teacher caught sight of the name as well. Discovering ranked among the top 50 filled the teacher with utter disbelief. Many people had believed this boy to be an E-rank awakener, but now they wondered if he had been concealing his true strength the whole time. The crowd struggled to understand how someone ranked so low could possibly reveal the abilities of an S-rank overnight. The situation was even more frustrating because just the top 10 participants received live tracking feeds. Couldn't be seen on any screens, leaving everyone puzzled about how he was achieving such a high score. The scene on the broadcast returned to the field, revealing as he entered the central area, a place known for its heightened risks. He intentionally pressed his foot down onto a glass bottle, causing it to break apart with a sudden, piercing snap. Observing the quiet surroundings, he realized that, just as he had anticipated, there were fewer beasts in this area. Creatures ranked 1 and higher were intelligent and protective of their territory, which made them much more challenging to confront than those without a rank. Before he had time to process his thoughts, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder and more forceful. In an instant, a pair of vehicles in front of him were tossed away effortlessly, resembling discarded playthings. A ferocious creature suddenly appeared, letting out a wild roar. Instantly knew what it was, a blade-armed tiger, classified as a rank 1 beast. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he realized his good fortune. He had only just arrived in the middle zone and had already encountered someone ranked first. She saw this as an ideal opportunity to put her spear skills to the test. The tiger, equipped with sharp blades on its limbs and driven by its wild instincts, let out an enraged roar as it barreled ahead, its powerful frame surging toward with the unstoppable force of a tank. Despite the situation, remained completely calm, his gaze steady and untroubled by any sign of fear. With a powerful pull, he lifted the dark spear he'd been dragging, causing it to whirl through the air like the blades of a massive windmill. A thunderous crash echoed through the air as the tip of the spear collided with the tiger's sharp claw. The force of the blow left the tiger, despite its formidable bladed claws, unable to feel its own paws. Hid a mocking smile, unimpressed by the rank 1 blade-armed tiger's display of power. In his mind, he doubted any creature but the Tiger King itself could ever truly challenge him. He bellowed a fierce threat to end his opponent's life and lunged ahead, gripping his spear tightly as he attacked. With his spear skills now reaching a higher level, his attacks moved at speeds far greater than before. The creature was unable to respond in time to the blindingly swift attack. In an instant, a blow tore through its abdomen, leaving a gaping, bowl-sized wound with a sickening, wet crunch. A typical animal would have fallen immediately after suffering an injury like that. The tiger responded with a fierce, bone-chilling roar that echoed its seething anger. Once more, overwhelmed by wild rage, the creature hurled itself toward him with uncontrollable aggression. As anticipated from a top-ranked beast, its endurance was incredible. Never thought he could defeat it in just one strike, especially without relying on his special power. With movements as smooth and powerful as a dragon, he wielded the obsidian spear, meeting the monstrous opponent in a brutal battle. Every blow from his weapon left a fresh, bleeding gash on the creature's flesh. Because of its massive size and limited range, the tiger struggled to inflict any significant harm on him. Gripped his spear and twisted it sharply, his tone icy as he declared that any resistance would be in vain. Intense bursts of electricity surged and danced fiercely across the length of the weapon. In the blink of an eye, he broke the spear, unleashing streaks of lightning that slithered through the air like deadly snakes, aiming directly at the tiger's head. As anticipated, bolts of lightning crashed directly onto the skull of the tiger, whose head bristled with sharp blades. The enormous, battered creature collapsed onto the earth, sending a thick cloud of dust billowing into the air. The system announced that the blade-armed tiger had been defeated, awarding 14 ability points for the achievement. Looked over his panel and noted to himself that defeating a rank 1 beast rewarded him with almost twice as many points as taking down an unranked creature. The more powerful the creature, the more ability points could be gained from it. While most people viewed the exam as a deadly ordeal, the narrator saw it as a valuable opportunity to grow stronger. Determination blazed in his eyes as he realized an opportunity lay before him. He knew he needed to take action now and gather as many points as he could. At the same time, inside the conference hall, this display kept flashing as new scores appeared. Xian from City First High's class, 3-1 SD held the lead with 345 points. Not far behind, from City Second High's class, 3-2 ND had 328 points, matching Li, who also represented City Second High. The teachers reacted with astonishment. They realized it was Fan from Class 5 who had achieved such a feat. Among all the classes at a similar level, only his had a student make it into the top 50, which impressed everyone. They agreed that later in the year should give a presentation to share the strategies he used. Embarrassed by the praise, Fan hurriedly any special credit, insisting that the students' hard work was what truly led to their success. At that moment, a voice called out in surprise as everyone noticed that ranking had suddenly climbed higher. He was now in 25th place with 372 points, representing City Second High. Amazed whispers spread as people realized he had gained 44 points in a single leap. The chief of the Education Bureau appeared visibly shocked. According to the grading criteria, defeating a peak unranked creature would earn between 6 and 8 points, while overcoming a rank 1 lower creature would be rewarded with 14 to 16 points. The smartwatch recorded a kill every 4 seconds, indicating that managed to defeat either 5 unranked beasts at their peak or 3 beasts ranked at level 1 within that brief time. Such impressive results hadn't been witnessed in years. He glanced over at Principal, silently acknowledging the remarkable talent of the student and wondering why he had never heard of until now. Principal's lips curled into a forced smile, betraying his recent discovery of the situation. Admitting his own lack of information, he indicated that anyone seeking specifics would need to consult the boy's homeroom teacher. He quickly pulled Fan closer and urged him to explain abilities and background to the leaders. Fan became paralyzed with fear, his words catching in his throat, as he hesitated in front of Director and Principal Jing Ming, who had recently developed a weak E-rank ability to control electricity. Principal's eyes widened in surprise when he heard the news. He questioned Teacher about whether Fan was really only at E-rank. Fan could only scratch his head in resignation and confirmed that it was true, explaining that he had even cautioned the student against choosing the martial path before the exam. The bureau chief took a measured sip of tea, his demeanor unruffled. He mused that if someone had managed to advance this much relying solely on, it must mean they possessed remarkable abilities beyond that. This realization only deepened the bureau chief's fascination with the individual. At the current rate, it seemed inevitable that he would soon climb into the top 10. They believed that once he acted, the truth would finally come to light. If his actions revealed dishonesty, it would confirm their suspicions of cheating. Hearing those words, Principal and Teacher turned noticeably pale, nervous sweat breaking out along their spines. With each passing moment, they updated again. Li now held the 8th position, followed by Jing Ming in 9th. Secured 10th place, Yi Li took 11th, and Tang Kai rounded out the 12th spot. Tang Kai gazed intently at the board, her mind slowly piecing together the truth. It became clear to her that cousin was behind it all. She recalled the move from the previous day and realized that only he could have made such a decisive strike. Even Joe, who was securely holding onto the first-place spot, found himself murmuring in surprise. With 6 hours still remaining in the exam, an unknown contender had suddenly climbed into the top 10. His name was unfamiliar to him, someone he had never encountered before. Inside the crumbling remains, pressed on with his tireless pursuit. Once more the system emitted a chime, announcing that the Shadow Cat had been defeated. It reported the creature's rank as 1 and awarded 14 additional ability points. Concealed a satisfied smile, realizing that, just as he had predicted, tracking down beasts in the middle zone proved to be much more productive. Looked up at the tracking drones swirling overhead, realizing he had made it into the top 10 competitors. The martial exam measured more than just physical power. It also judged each person's potential, and the highest scorers always attracted the most notice. He had no intention of concealing his abilities. Reaching the top 10 was just the start for him. However, before entering the core zone, he knew he had to strengthen himself once more. He summoned his status panel and read through the details. His name appeared at the top, followed by his rank, Awakener. His unique ability, Annihilation Thunder Physique, stood out. The numbers showed 141 in vitality, 160 in spirit, and 160 in skills. His proficiency in spear technique had reached the advanced level, while his Lightning Gale step was still at the beginner stage. At the bottom, the panel displayed 312 available ability points. He stared in surprise at the number, unable to believe that even with more than 300 points saved up, his rank remained unchanged. There was only a single route from Awakener to true ability user, and that was through cultivating one's abilities. Accepting this, the character decided to enhance their fundamental stats even more. His body grew stronger as his physique increased by 40 and his spirit by 22, sending a rush of newfound energy through him. A satisfied grin spread across his face. Everything felt just right. Confidently, he prepared to enter the core zone. As soon as he moved ahead, the system erupted with a bright red alert, signaling that he had entered the core zone where danger was at its highest level. Soon after, he came across a group of tigers with sharp blades for arms, feasting hungrily on the remains of a horned rhino, its body already half-eaten. A creature of enormous size, much bigger than any of the others, hunched over the lifeless body. The figure standing in the center caught everyone's attention with its powerful presence and massive form. Its unusually long, blade-like arms left no doubt. It could only be the infamous blade-armed Tiger King. His eyes sparkled with anticipation as he realized that a great opportunity for gain was unfolding before him. In the very next moment, his face grew stern and serious. He spun around abruptly, announcing that he was aware of someone's presence and demanding that they reveal themselves. Emerging from the darkness, Joe walked forward, a subtle smile on his face. He acknowledged awareness, expressing that he was impressed to be noticed. Joe then identified as the newcomer who had recently entered the top 10. When heard someone mention his name, a frown creased his forehead as he wondered how this person recognized him. Yang let out a quiet laugh, his eyes glinting with curiosity. He was certain he recognized every powerful contender who had made it to the core zone, except for this unfamiliar face before him. When someone unknown appeared out of nowhere, it became obvious to him. This newcomer had to be the mysterious challenger causing upheaval among the rankings. Joe revealed that his attention had been fixed on this group of tigers with blades for some time. When noticed the sword Joe held, his gaze became sharp and suspicious, silently accusing Joe of attempting to take the prey for himself. Yang raised his hand in a hurried gesture, clarifying his intentions. He explained that the Tiger King was considered a mid-level beast, and with 9 more accompanying it in the group, it would be impossible for any individual to defeat them alone. He suggested that working together would be their best option. To his astonishment, interrupted him with a frosty tone, refusing any assistance. Turning away, marched confidently toward the beasts, silently declaring that he could handle things by himself. He moved ahead, climbing onto the roof of a toppled bus, his eyes fixed boldly on the group of tigers before him. As soon as he appeared, the tiger with blades for arms tensed up, instantly on guard. Observed with composure that, just as he anticipated from a group with a leader, the pack managed to arrange themselves into a basic formation. The Tiger King let out a thunderous roar, immediately drawing the attention of several nearby beasts toward himself. In the very next moment, they lunged forward, their growls echoing like rolling thunder. From his spot on the edge of the action, Joe observed with a subtle, knowing smile. He silently wondered whether this reckless individual was simply courting disaster or secretly harboring some extraordinary talent. Rotated his spear in a slow, relaxed manner, giving the impression of effortless ease. The weapon spun with increasing speed, transforming into a whirlwind of gleaming metal. The first tiger lunged forward, but its claws were violently knocked aside by the whirling power of the spinning spear. In one swift, merciless motion, moved through the fray, cutting down a group of blade-armed tigers as effortlessly as a reaper harvesting souls. The system announced the defeat of a blade-armed tiger at rank 1 lower, awarding 10 ability points. Shortly after, another blade-armed tiger at rank 1 mid was vanquished, granting an additional 15 ability points. Beast after beast collapsed under the force of his spear, their lifeless forms stacking up on the earth. As his followers fell to the ground, the Tiger King narrowed his eyes and released a deep, threatening growl. Cast a brief look at his spear, and with a hint of disappointment, thought to himself that his physical strength was still lacking. He regretted not being able to eliminate all of his enemies in a single strike. The Tiger King, with blades extending from his arms, surged forward and bridged the gap between them in an instant. A thunderous sound burst forth from the creature's mouth. Without warning, the glass in every window lining the street exploded into countless fragments. Joe pressed his hands tightly over his ears, his features contorted with unbearable pain. Responded with an icy stare, remaining unfazed by the outburst that might have intimidated others. He silently asserted that such threats held no power over him. He lunged ahead, gripping his spear tightly. The weapon met the force of the Tiger King's powerful blow, stopping his massive attack in its tracks. With the force of the recoil, propelled himself upward, soaring high above the ground. Before the creature had a chance to respond, he gripped his spear tightly and turned twice in rapid succession, his body whirling through the air. Summoning every ounce of power he possessed, he brought the weapon crashing down upon the Tiger King's head. In a heartbeat, he found himself balanced on the creature's back, his spear aimed downward in preparation. A sharp, unsettling noise echoed through the air when the spear drove straight through its target. The system emitted a chime, announcing that the blade-armed Tiger King, a rank 1 upper creature, had been defeated. The message also revealed that 20 ability points were awarded. Joe remained motionless, his eyes stretched in shock. He could hardly believe that someone had managed to defeat everyone at once. The thought crossed his mind that this person might not even be human. Looked out over the countless tiger bodies scattered before him, feeling a wave of satisfaction as he realized just how many ability points he had earned. He wondered just how high his total might climb by the time the exam finished. His gaze grew intense, and he thought that finding as many as possible would be best. He realized he needed to track down an expat quickly. As he started to walk away, Yang called out to him, her voice filled with astonishment. She demanded to know how he had managed to defeat an entire group of tigers using only a spear, questioning whether he possessed some sort of enhancement ability. Replied with just 2 words, revealing his power as lightning type, before walking off without glancing behind him. Yang's expression contorted with fury as suspicion grew in his mind about the lightning type claim. He refused to believe the explanation, feeling insulted by what he considered a blatant lie. Frustrated, he decided that if the truth wouldn't be told, he didn't want to hear any more excuses. He silently judged the other person, thinking their personality was truly unpleasant. He hurriedly lifted his smartwatch, wondering if all the monsters he had just defeated had allowed his score to match hers already. In an instant, the outcome left him stunned. From City, Second High had claimed the top spot with a score of 11.22 points, while Joe from City First High followed in second place with 985 points. Yang almost cried out in frustration, as he realized with disbelief that his rival had managed to get ahead of him. At the same time, inside the viewing hall, the director could not hide his admiration. He marveled at the powerful way the spear was handled. Though was just 18, his skills were already on par with seasoned experts. In the director's eyes was a true prodigy. Director expressed his confidence that with on their side, City would surely secure a spot among the province's top 100 schools. He also mentioned his intention to suggest an award for Second High after the exams. Principal's face lit up with happiness as he gratefully acknowledged Director's support. At that instant, overwhelming emotion nearly brought him to tears as he realized was nothing short of a miracle. and for the first time in ages, he believed their school might finally have a chance to thrive again. 3 hours had passed, yet Joe continued to wander restlessly through the core zone. Confusion clouded his mind as he wondered where all the beasts had disappeared to. A voice from behind responded, suggesting he direct his question to the person in first place. When he turned around, surprise flickered in his eyes. He wondered aloud when the others had started working as a team. Wu had secured 3rd place, Ming followed in 4th, and Tang Kai came in 9th. Tang Kai explained in a calm, even tone that the result was because of him. His hands tightened into fists as anger surged through her. Had wiped out nearly all the beasts in the core zone, leaving nothing for anyone else to hunt. With no prey left, they were forced to team up. Yang stared in disbelief, unable to accept what he was seeing. He knew it couldn't be true. After all, the core zone was supposed to be crawling with countless beasts. Tang Kai moved forward, his eyes fixed on the other person. From their expression, he could easily tell they hadn't reviewed the rankings recently. He urged them to check's latest score. Displayed on were the rankings. At the top was a student from City, holding 3,435 points and placed 2nd in the 2nd year of high school. Following was Joe, also from City, with 11.03 points, ranked 1st in the 3rd year. Wu, with 945 points, was listed next, representing City as well and standing 1st among the senior students. Upon seeing these results, Joe was rendered speechless by the outcome. Tang Kai clarified the situation, pointing out that even after deducting the more than 700 points he had collected in the middle zone, there were still over 2,500 points left. This indicated that he had defeated almost 200 beasts just within the core zone. Yang struggled to process the situation, realizing that the reason for the earlier protectiveness over his target now made sense. It became clear to him that the plan had been set in motion from the very beginning. Tang Kai announced that only a short time remained, and explained that the group was preparing to join forces and venture into the deepest part of the area. Yang realized that location was guarded by the least powerful beast among the high ranks, yet there were even rank 2 beast kings present. Attempting to enter alone would be a death sentence. His hands balled even as she considered the situation. She understood that this was precisely the reason they needed to work together. The decision now rested on whether the other person would agree to join them. As darkness settled over the land, perched alone on a pile of slain beasts, all of his materials had disappeared, and time was quickly running out for the test. To gain additional ability points, the character realized they would need to venture further inward. However, they knew that the deepest area was inhabited by rank 2 beasts, which posed a significant threat. Understanding this, the character concluded that increasing their strength beforehand was essential. He accessed his status panel, which displayed his rank, his Awakener ability titled Purple Heaven Thunder, and his current standing. His physique measured at 181, while his spirit reached 182. The panel also showed his skills. His spear technique was marked as advanced, and his lightning gale strike was at the beginner level. Finally, he had accumulated a total of 2,413 ability points. He gazed at the enormous pile of points and wondered to himself where he ought to allocate them. After a moment's hesitation, he decided to stop overthinking and place them all in a single category. A rush of energy coursed through, making him grin with confidence. He felt certain that he was now prepared to face the ultimate opponent in the martial exam. The final dash was. They wondered which rank 2 beast would be released as the last challenge of the year. Yang and the others continued forward, but an unexpected scene ahead caused them all to stop in terror. Standing in front of them was a ferocious bear, its eyes filled with a savage thirst for blood. Trouble was well known among everyone, its tough hide considered even stronger than E-grade alloy. Even powerful missiles failed to leave a mark on this rare beast. A single swipe of the beast's paw had enough force to flatten every one of them. The expression on Yang's face grew grim. Tang Kai let out a weary sigh, feeling defeated by the situation. He believed it was time to give up on their current efforts. Although the fierce bear remained still, merely entering this area would cause them to be annihilated by the top-ranked high-tier beasts. She lifted her hand with determination, signaling her decision. Apologizing to the group in her mind, she made it clear she was stepping away. To her, no achievement was valuable enough to risk her own safety. Yang slammed his foot against the floor in frustration, silently cursing whoever had created such a cruel exam question. As the group prepared to fall back, suddenly called out, drawing everyone's attention to a figure in the distance. She pointed out that someone was approaching, and it appeared to be. As expected, he came running toward them from afar, his pace quick and determined. His actions unfolded with remarkable grace and speed, every footfall landing with the smooth accuracy of a gentle stream. His gaze brightened with recognition as she spotted, silently marveling at his striking appearance. Meanwhile, Zhou regarded her reaction with disdain, scoffing inwardly at the idea that good looks mattered when facing the deadly chaos of a beast horde. As soon as arrived, the group grew restless, his appearance causing an instant commotion among them. Without warning, a swarm of beasts charged toward him all at the same time. The noise attracted an even larger crowd of creatures, all pouring in from the back. In just a few seconds, found himself completely encircled. At last, the swarm of monstrous creatures engulfed him completely, making him disappear from view. Yang let out a sharp, dismissive laugh, silently condemning the recklessness that could only lead to disaster. In his mind, anyone meeting such a fate had only themselves to blame. Across from him, Wu's words shook with fear, unable to believe that might truly be gone. Meanwhile, Tang Kai whirled around, determination burning in his gaze as he resolved that he had to step in and offer his aid. The others seized him without hesitation, their faces filled with alarm as they questioned his sanity, insisting that he was risking his life for no reason and reminding him of his own recent words. Despite their protests, Tang Kai's voice quivered with emotion as he revealed the truth. They could not comprehend his determination, for was his cousin, and he refused to watch his family perish without trying to help. A subtle flicker of light suddenly shimmered from the depths of the crowd. In the next instant, a deafening clap of thunder erupted, and streaks of lightning shot out from the spot where it had disappeared. A brilliant bolt of lightning lit up the sky so intensely that Zhou and his companions had to cover their faces to block the glare. They were stunned and confused, wondering if this sudden lightning strike could possibly be power in action. In the middle of the courtyard, stood upright, his figure encased in shimmering bolts of lightning that danced across his body. He stared at the heap of slain creatures and realized a hard fact. Sheer force would never be enough to defeat such a large group of powerful rank 1 monsters. Understanding this, he understood he must finally use his special power. The sheer force and dominance on display matched exactly what one would anticipate from someone wielding an S-rank power. Without warning, the earth trembled beneath a deep, pulsing beat that echoed, tum, tum, tum. The massive, ferocious bear towered above, standing on its back legs and reaching a height of over 5 meters, its presence as intimidating as a tank preparing to charge. Witnessing the destruction of its minions, the creature unleashed a roar filled with rage. Squinted, carefully assessing his opponent. The creature was massive and radiated immense strength, yet its movements lacked speed and grace. Confident in the power of Purple Heaven Thunder, believed he could manage this threat. Despite their presence, the minor creatures served only as insignificant obstacles. With that decision made, the character prepared to sweep the area before proceeding. He channeled the energy of the Purple Heaven Thunder directly into his veins. In a sudden burst of motion, he lunged ahead with the speed and force of a launched cannonball. In an instant, multiple rushing creatures were ripped to pieces. The system announced that a rank 1 high tier had been defeated, awarding 13 ability points. His mind raced with excitement as he realized he was experiencing the physical surge of an S-rank ability. The sensation was astonishing. Even though the electricity running through his body felt perilous and he knew he couldn't sustain it for long, he marveled at its power. The power at hand was more than sufficient to defeat the monsters before him. The rank 1 high-tier unicorn rhino fell, granting an additional 15 ability points. As the rhinoceros collapsed, the enraged bear could no longer restrain itself and charged with a furious roar. A gigantic paw slammed through the air, tearing it apart with overwhelming strength. Enveloped in crackling lightning, appeared hazy and ghost-like, his form shifting like a mirage. He re-emerged at a distance, already several meters from where he had vanished. Fueled by anger, the massive bear lunged forward with incredible speed, crossing over 30 meters almost instantaneously. The bear charged forward with impressive speed, yet managed to outpace it. In one swift motion, he sprang aside, skillfully avoiding the attack without difficulty. He moved swiftly through the crowd, so fast that the raging bear couldn't even touch him. A rank 1 high-tier horned lizard fell, and the system immediately that 15 ability points had been earned for slaying the beast. Each time a creature was defeated, the system's alerts echoed the achievement. The bear's frustration intensified with every missed strike, its anger building as it failed to connect with its target. Gave a sly grin, clearly amused as he noticed the frustration brewing in his opponent. He taunted them, pointing out that their followers seemed to be falling one after another. He curled his lips into a sneer, assuring his opponent that there was no need to worry. After he finished dealing with the final obstacle, their own time would come. Without hesitation, he sprinted directly at the last remaining unicorn rhino. Without warning, the aggressive bear hurled its massive paw through the air, bringing it crashing down directly where stood. Squinted, frustration flickering in his gaze, as he realized the opponent had anticipated his action. A thunderous sound echoed as the two enormous hands collided with force. The force of the blast hurled the surrounding vehicles high into the air, tossing them several meters away. When the creature finally unclenched its massive claws, nothing remained within them except the broken pieces of the rhino's body. A jagged flash of lightning tore through the clouds, appeared from high above, surrounded by crackling electricity. Electricity danced along his form as he gripped his spear with determination and plunged directly toward the bear. With all distractions gone, the challenger focused intently, eager to test whether the creature's tough, armor-like skin could endure the full force of their thunderous power. The spear lunged ahead with a thunderous sound, piercing into the furious bear. A deafening thunderclap erupted, shaping itself into a gigantic orb of lightning that burst apart the moment it struck. A powerful shockwave erupted, driving Joe and his companions to cover their faces in an attempt to protect themselves. Inside the viewing hall, the crowd stared in shock, unable to hide their amazement at the frightening power had just revealed. Director forcefully struck the table, his frustration evident as he glared at Principal. He questioned how such a weak power could be considered an E-rank ability, clearly finding the explanation unbelievable. One of the principals whispered in amazement, marveling at how someone could defeat top-ranked elites and even stand their ground against a second-rank boss. This seemed to be more than just a simple rank. It might surpass the usual limits altogether. Principal was left speechless, barely able to stutter out a suggestion that perhaps it could be some kind of mutation. Director's eyes sparkled with anticipation, convinced that after this day, everyone in the Federation would recognize the name. At the same time, Satak sent the already aggressive bear into a wild rage. Saliva sprayed from its open jaws as it let out a thunderous roar, appearing as though it was about to swallow him in one bite. Sprang backward, his eyes wide with disbelief. He realized that, despite using all his strength, his attack had barely made a mark. It became clear why this creature was considered a rare rank 2 beast. Its sharp, dense fur was stronger than steel and completely resistant to electricity. With the power currently possessed, attempting to defeat it in a single blow by surpassing 2 ranks was simply out of reach. Enraged by its constant defeats, the bear completely lost control. Dark, smoky energy erupted from its body as it went into a wild frenzy, determined to rip to pieces. A moment later, a powerful strike slammed down with deafening force. Braced himself with his spear, attempting to defend, yet the force of the shockwave hurled him back several meters. The creature's berserk ability had already been activated much earlier than expected, making it clear that it held a strong animosity toward him. Crimson fire glowed in the creature's eyes, while its enormous claws smashed into the spot he had narrowly escaped. The ground split open in response to the creature's rage, its deafening roar echoing up toward the sky. The creature attacked once more, but moved swiftly, just barely avoiding each blow with quick reflexes. Its physical strength surged to astonishing levels whenever it entered a berserk state. The creature had paid with its mind. Any trace of intelligence had vanished. In its place stood a relentless predator, driven solely by raw instinct to hunt and destroy. Direct confrontation would be unwise. Relying on agility would prove most effective in gradually weakening the opponent. Without warning, lost consciousness and collapsed, pitching forward. The spear struck the bear's hindquarters with brutal force. The enraged bear let out a pained roar as it crashed heavily to the earth. His voice low and fierce, urged an attack while the enemy was vulnerable, drawing upon his own thunderous energy. Bolts of violet lightning crashed down from the sky, detonating against the creature and forcing anguished screams from deep within its throat. As the storm faded, squinted at the smoking, convulsing figure, wondering if it had finally died. Offered a subtle smile, confident in the power of 30 seconds of purple heaven thunder. He believed that no defense known to man could endure such a force. Without warning, the savage bear's crimson eyes flew open, blazing with a fierce hunger. A huge paw crashed downward, but before it could make contact, bolts of lightning surged through the creature's body, freezing it in place. Its eyes grew steely with determination, signaling that the moment to finish everything had arrived. The spear whirled in his grip, radiating an overwhelming and relentless power. With a single powerful strike, everything in its path was destroyed. The fierce bear fell to the ground with a deafening noise, lifeless where it landed. The system emitted a clear chime, announcing that a Rank 2 low-tier violent bear had been defeated. As a result, 24 ability points were awarded. Let out a relieved breath, feeling a sense of completion wash over him. He reflected on how leveling up Lightning Storm's strike in preparation for this battle had been a wise decision. The effort he had put in had clearly paid off. The fight may have only spanned a couple of minutes, but for him, it was the most thrilling experience he had ever faced in combat. He leaned his head backward, a bright spark in his eyes as he wondered how many points he would earn after conquering the whole core region. Inside the control room, those present remained motionless, stunned by what they witnessed. The display shimmered, revealing the latest rankings. At the top, From City Second High School held first place with 10,835 points. Right behind, Joe of City First High School secured second place, earning 1,103 points. In third, Wu, also from City First High School, had accumulated 945 points. Director sprang up from his seat in utter astonishment. Scoring 10,000 points meant that someone had not only surpassed City's record, but had also demolished the provincial record. In his mind, this wasn't just the work of a genius. It was the achievement of someone extraordinary, a true prodigy among prodigies. A different spectator pointed out that the previous year's provincial champion had earned just above 8,000 points, making it clear that had already all but guaranteed this year's victory. In the testing grounds, looked down at the defeated creature, fully aware that the conclusion of the challenge was fast approaching. The inner and core areas had already been secured, leaving only the mid-zone to be searched next. Every creature found there would make a difference, regardless of how little it added to the total. As he began to walk away, Tang Kai and her companions appeared from the shadows behind him. Tang Kai stared in shock, hardly able to believe what she had witnessed. Had just taken down a Rank 2 Beast King, an incredible feat that seemed almost impossible. Despite his overwhelming lead in points, he was now turning back. Tang Kai wondered why he didn't simply finish the exam ahead of time. His brows knit together while she observed his movements, realizing he seemed to be making his way back toward the mid-zone. A sudden realization hit her. She couldn't believe it. Was he really ruthless enough to take out everyone on the field? The group stopped in their tracks, stunned by the suggestion. They wondered if he truly intended to eliminate every remaining creature in the test. Joe was the first to respond, quickly realizing that with such speed, the other person actually had a chance of succeeding. He understood that if they didn't act immediately, they'd be left with nothing in the final hour. Without waiting, he apologized to the others, declaring that their alliance was over as he rushed off on his own. The rest of the group quickly fled, gripped by fear that might destroy all the creatures and leave nothing behind for them to earn any points. About an hour later, the loudspeakers echoed throughout the area, announcing that the City 2037 martial arts exam was now over. Any additional beasts defeated from this point on would not be included in the results, and all participants were instructed to return at once. Tang Kai let out a disappointed sigh, realizing it was already finished. The majority of the students fell to the ground, worn out and bruised from their efforts. Among them, one student let out a cry of anger, feeling the sting of disappointment. That student wondered in frustration why this had to happen at that moment, knowing they had been only one creature away from success, just a single defeat short of passing. At the same time, slung the carcass of a defeated beast over his shoulder. He remarked to himself with disappointment that the battle had ended so soon, feeling regretful that he hadn't even had a chance to get serious. Before long, the examinees began to leave the testing area one by one. Outside, Tang Kai quickly found herself blocked by an enthusiastic girl, who pressed her with curiosity about whether was truly her cousin. Tang Kai rolled her eyes yet again, exasperated as she confirmed for the third time that the person in question was indeed her cousin. The girl's face turned red with embarrassment as she silently pleaded with her older sister to share his number, hoping she would agree just this one time. Tang Kai let out a mocking laugh, recalling how the girl had insisted just the day before that she wasn't interested. Now, however, she was desperate to get his number. The girl, her voice full of urgency, reminded Tang Kai that her feelings had changed. Yesterday was different. Now that he was the highest scorer, she begged Tang Kai for help, pleading for a chance. Right then, a voice rang out announcing survival. As emerged, his long spear resting against his back, a wave of eager classmates surged toward him. He acknowledged them with a serene smile, while the atmosphere thrummed with anticipation. A student with a shaved head patted Joe's shoulder and joked that the place at the top should have belonged to him. Joe managed a strained smile and admitted that there was nothing he could do. Second High had turned out a genius. He felt content with the score he had achieved. At that moment, the principal and director walked over with friendly smiles and greeted, giving his hand a firm shake. They offered their congratulations to him and proceeded to make introductions, explaining that director represented the Education Bureau. Instead of take the bus home, they assured him that director would drive him back himself. Paused to consider his options, realizing this choice was an improvement. He knew that if he had chosen to ride the bus, he would have faced a barrage of questions the entire trip. Before long, he found himself traveling in director's vehicle. Smiled at, curious to know if he had made up his mind about which ability academy he wanted to go to. Responded with humility, explaining that his recent months had been devoted to intensive training, leaving little time to consider his options for university. Director let out a soft laugh, expressing that the student's impressive score would easily secure admission to any university in the country. However, he went on to reveal that most top-tier ability users actually attended just 3 prestigious academies, and he offered to suggest those schools. Ability University stood as a prominent state institution, situated right in the nation's center. Most of its graduates found themselves entering government service immediately after finishing their studies. Even the country's 9th highest guardian hailed from this renowned university. Ability University stood proudly in a lively port city, teeming with abundant resources and prestigious clubs. It was the ideal place for anyone eager to challenge themselves and reach their full potential. Jinxing Ability University boasted a legacy that stretched back over 2 centuries, its halls filled with time-honored customs and exceptional instructors. Each of its 3 main branches guarded exclusive cultivation techniques, hidden from the rest of the world. For countless students, attending this university was the ultimate aspiration. Gave a nod of understanding before his curiosity took over. He wondered aloud about the way ability users needed special training to grow from simply awakened powers to mastering their full abilities. His thoughts lingered on the question of what distinguished the most advanced training methods from the rest. Clarified that the training manuals were classified as Rank 2. He noted that using standard manuals would require 3 to 4 years for someone to advance, while the most advanced techniques could help a person finish their transformation within only 6 months. He offered a reassuring smile, confident that there was nothing to fear. The test scores alone ensured eligibility for special recruitment. In fact, the most prestigious organizations would compete to offer the most favorable conditions. Ultimately, the decision would rest entirely in their hands. The following day, arrived back at his house and took his time basking in the comfort of a soothing, unhurried shower. He opened his system interface and saw that he still had 2,534 ability points remaining, a total he estimated would be sufficient to carry him through until he started university. He pondered whether the academy organized tournaments for hunting beasts. If such events did not exist, he realized he would have to get ready for journeys into the wild on his own. At that moment, the front door slowly swung open as two girls quietly entered. One of them noticed the broken lock and whispered that it was perfect, suggesting they could catch him off guard. He saw that his aunt was there, accompanied by his cousin, Tang Kai. As stood in the middle of changing his clothes, a group suddenly burst into the room. The unexpected intrusion left him motionless in shock. Tang Kai, her cheeks bright red from embarrassment, quickly shielded her eyes and demanded an explanation for their abrupt entrance. Hurried into his room, grumbling under his breath about how someone had entered without knocking, and then blamed him for it. After losing his parents, his aunt became his caregiver, surrounding him with affection, looking after his needs, and preparing nourishing meals like bamboo shoots and pork to help him grow healthy and strong. After he finished putting on his clothes, his aunt spoke with a soft voice. She admitted that she never really understood much about martial arts exams, but when she learned that he had registered, concern filled her thoughts for months. Now that he stood before her unharmed, she felt her worries lift. His performance or results were unimportant to her. Even if he hadn't succeeded, it would have been all right. Gazed at Tang Kai with a puzzled expression, clearly surprised. He wondered aloud why Tang Kai hadn't been informed by Kai Kai that he had achieved the top score on the exam. Tang Kai flashed a mischievous smile, thinking it would be best for the other person to explain the situation directly. Brushed his fingers against his nose, a hint of pride in his expression, as he informed that he had performed well, earning more than 10,000 points. His aunt was so startled that she accidentally sprayed her tea everywhere. After wiping her mouth, she struggled to find her words, her disbelief clear as she questioned the truth behind the shocking news. Tang Kai quickly interrupted, assuring their mother that it was all real, had actually earned 11,124 points. Tears rolled down his aunt's cheeks while she pulled him into a close embrace, her voice trembling as she began to call him our.
At that moment's phone emitted a sharp notification sound. A message from the Provincial Education Bureau appeared on his screen, identifying him as a candidate from city. The update revealed the results of the recent martial exam, announcing that had secured first place with a remarkable total score of 11,124. He gazed at the screen, a smile spreading across his face as he read the words, "Provincial Champion." The realization struck him he had achieved his goal. In a matter of minutes, the story spread rapidly on all social media channels. Doubts began to creep in. Normally, the highest score belonged to a top-ranked, but it was possible for an awakened individual to claim first place. Rumors circulated about an E-rank individual rising to become the provincial champion, and the sheer absurdity of it made someone joke that they would embarrass themselves right then and there if it turned out to be true. The person responded with interest, then began searching for the exam footage, letting others know it would only take a moment. The award ceremony for the 2037 martial exam was taking place at City No. 2 High School. Reporters crowded around as Principal faced a wave of online skepticism. Many people suspected something suspicious had occurred and demanded an explanation from him. Principal remained calm and unruffled. He explained that this entire exam had been recorded and uploaded to the school's official website, where anyone could review it at their convenience. He assured everyone that the integrity of the martial exam was unquestionable. As the video played, the room erupted in disbelief. Shocked reactions filled the air as viewers questioned how he could pierce a unicorn rhino's skull with just a single strike. They whispered in awe, realizing his strength surpassed that of most. Someone pointed out the obvious power, speculating he must be a strength type, while another remembered he was supposed to control lightning. Doubt crept in as they all wondered how such overwhelming force could come from someone with only an E rank, and who had barely awakened his abilities. The principal offered a warm smile, clearly pleased. The video evidence made everything clear. His impressive score was genuine. He had become the first student from City to win the provincial championship. Such an achievement, the principal believed, was worthy of celebration. The staff members carried the prizes onto the stage. There was a cash award provided by the Education Bureau, along with an elite training manual. In addition, the city government offered an equivalent cash bonus and presented a lavish villa as part of the rewards. Standing quietly at the edge of the scene, an observer remained hidden, watching without a word. The female professor appeared, quietly noting that releasing video evidence did not eliminate the possibility of using performance enhancers. She emphasized that the most important task was to verify his true ability rank. The constant bursts of camera flashes illuminated the room. The principal bent closer to a teacher and quietly inquired about the whereabouts of the event's main guest. The teacher responded that a simple phone call would suffice, explaining that the student was currently practicing at the martial arts hall but was already on the way. Even after the exams had ended, the new champion continued training, setting themselves apart from others in a way that even the principal noticed. He appeared visibly shaken while carrying a tray of tea, offering it to the professors with a polite gesture. Despite having placed the object down, his hands continued to tremble uncontrollably. He silently realized that he was experiencing the aura of genuine, high-ranking for the first time. The sheer presence radiating from that aura sent a shiver of fear through anyone nearby. It seemed unlikely that a fight would break out right then and there. Who led recruitment at Shanghai Abilities University broke the silence first. He remarked that it had been some time since the group had last assembled, then wondered aloud which talented individual they would be competing to recruit on this occasion. A student at Abilities University let out a light laugh and regarded Professor with a knowing look. She believed there was no need for the professor to pretend otherwise. If test results were genuine, then he was clearly destined to join. Wu Yuan, a student at Abilities University, let out a dismissive snort. He questions authority to claim someone first and asserted that was also interested in recruiting him. Observed the situation and realized that dealing with a provincial champion always led to intense clashes. Without warning, the sound of a click echoed as the office door swung open. Entered the room with several long spears secured across his back, offering a polite afternoon greeting to the assembled professors. Without warning, the bustling office grew quiet. His gaze brightened with approval. He admired the sharp determination on display, noting how the person before him seemed completely in sync with their weapon. Even after finishing the test, their discipline had not wavered. Surrounded by 3 powerful ability users, they stood firm, showing no sign of hesitation. The principal entered the room and began introducing the guests. He identified one as Professor, who had traveled from Shanghai University, another as Professor from, and the last as Professor Wu from. Acted swiftly, addressing without hesitation. He mentioned that everyone had already reviewed exam footage and noted that fighting skills were outstanding, with technique that stood out even more. He stopped abruptly, his voice growing more intense as he pointed out a concern. There was a single issue. The person's power did not align with the officially recorded E-rank weak current. He waited, clearly expecting an explanation. Just as he had anticipated, mentally reassured himself and smoothly delivered the explanation he had planned. He recounted how, while practicing at home before the exam, a bolt of lightning from a storm had hit him. Since that incident, he had realized that his powers had significantly increased. The recruiters looked at each other, realizing that what they heard matched the signs of an ability mutation. Unexpectedly revealed a metal disc, then remarked that likely had no real understanding of her own mutated power. Fortunately, had come prepared with a portable detector and instructed to approach and channel her ability into the device. Su gave a silent nod before releasing his power. Without warning, fierce bolts of electricity raced over the surface of the disc, producing a sizzle so intense that it caused the entire room to shudder. Sighs narrowed, a tremor in her voice revealing her unease. The intensity before her was overwhelming, so powerful that it made her own heart pound uncontrollably. Simultaneously, the detector let out a sharp beep, signaling the completion of the ability scan. It revealed that an ability had been found, Heaven's Thunder, belonging to Z, along with its rating. The voice suddenly fell silent, and there was no sign of any rating appearing. Fissures began to snake their way over the surface of the disk. The device broke into pieces with a sudden, crisp sound. The principal stood in shock, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before him. In his mind, he wondered what was going on. The recruiters could hardly contain their excitement. They believed the matter was resolved. Witnessing the detector being pushed beyond its limits, they determined his abilities must be of at least S rank. Remained silent, though inwardly he brimmed with excitement. He felt certain that his instincts had proven correct and believed he had finally made the right choice. Wu Yuan finally reached his limit. The offer became clear. Enrolling at university would earn him a 4 million yuan signing bonus, a complete set of C-grade gear, and unrestricted access to every training technique and battle record throughout his 4 years at the school. Before had a chance to respond, burst into a light-hearted laugh, teasingly questioning if that was truly the best offer he could make. With a captivating smile, she promised Sue that joining university would come with an upfront payment of 6 million. She went on to explain that throughout all 4 years, Sue would receive any weapon, training technique, or battle record she desired, all at no cost, and then asked if this offer sounded appealing. Sue let out a silent sigh, realizing just how significant the offer was. Remained calm, showing no sign of being intimidated by the other's offers. With steady assurance, she explained that at university, their strength didn't rely on money or resources. Any techniques or records offered by the competitors could be equaled by the university. Moreover, she promised an additional benefit. Every year, they would grant 1 S-grade cultivation resource. As soon as he spoke those words, and Wu Yuan stood motionless, stunned by disbelief. Unlike the others, Sue felt confused and couldn't grasp the meaning behind it. Took his time to explain that dragon-class beasts were known for their incredible strength and dragon-like forms, which was the reason they were referred to as the dragon race. From the moment they are born, their strength already surpasses that of most other species, placing them at tier 4 or 5. Within the collection of S-grade resources was an extraordinary substance, the heart's blood of an 8th-tier adult dragon beast. Consuming this dragon blood brought about remarkable improvements to the body, granting a physique strong enough to compete with monsters of the dragon class. This level served as the baseline for all S-grade resources. Sighed softly, her expression betraying a hint of envy. She found herself drawn in by the allure, silently admitting that famed prosperity was truly captivating. Wu Yuan muttered his frustrations under his breath, aware that S-grade resources were typically allotted to the most advanced students. The fact that someone was prepared to offer them directly to a first year left him feeling hopeless about any chance of matching that level of privilege. The 3 recruiters simultaneously shifted their attention to, signaling that the moment had come for him to make his choice among the prestigious universities they represented. Sue, not pausing for even a moment, declared her decision to attend University of Abilities. He had decided a while ago, stood out by providing both superior deals and the finest combat instruction. In fact, during the intercollegiate leg, produced nearly 50% of all the champions. After deciding, Sue offered a respectful bow to the remaining pair, expressing gratitude for their kindness. Reached into his storage ring and took out a letter. The letter welcomed, expressing anticipation for his arrival. It stated that while regular enrollment would start on September 1st, as a special recruit was permitted to arrive ahead of schedule. The letter also assured him that his living arrangements would be prepared in advance. As Sue held the letter tightly, she eagerly wondered if she would be allowed early access to the library's cultivation manuals and records of past battles. Jean smiled warmly, assuring them that a private study room in the library would be arranged, guaranteeing a quiet space without any interruptions. Jean then handed over their contact information, instructing them to get in touch right after arriving in. Upon hearing the news, Sue could hardly contain her eagerness and was ready to leave right away. The hours slipped away, and before Sue realized it, he was standing in the bustling train station as an announcement filled the air, informing everyone that the G91 was ready for boarding. Tears shimmered in his aunt's eyes as she realized the child had at last matured. Standing next to her, Uncle Tang Dowling let out a quiet laugh, certain that this journey would allow Ming to reach new heights. Kai Kai's parents began discussing her future, noting that it wouldn't be long before she started applying to colleges. They mentioned that her cousin Jingming had already decided to attend University of Abilities and encouraged Kai Kai to consider schools in the same city. Jingming's father brought up the idea, though her mother seemed uncertain. Kai Kai's own father supported the suggestion, reasoning that if the 2 girls studied in together, they would be able to help one another. With her parents both urging her, Tang Kai Kai realized she had no choice but to agree. She nodded in acceptance, assuring her mother and father that she understood. At the same time, had already boarded a train heading toward As the train sped along the tracks, he calculated that he had 6 hours before reaching his destination, just enough time to go over his cultivation technique. Out of all the prizes he had earned from the exam, the one he valued most was a manual titled The Abyssal Sea Method. Cultivation methods, much like abilities, were divided into different levels: basic, intermediate, advanced, and ultimate. The more advanced the tier, the quicker one's progress would be. The technique he held was classified as an intermediate method. Thanks to his mental strength, which had reached 180, he managed to commit the whole book to memory within only a few hours. The manual explained that a special kind of energy filled the world. By carefully adhering to the guide, he became aware of this energy on his first day. As a result, his system screen displayed a bright, shining plus symbol, signaling that an upgrade was available. Sutton decided to wait before making his move. He understood that moving from awakened to ability user should be done using the best method available. He planned to use the advanced manuals he would have access to in college. He refused to throw away this opportunity on something as ordinary as an intermediate manual. As the hours slipped by, the train eventually arrived in, exited the carriage, and found himself standing in front of the impressive entrance to University of Abilities, completely awestruck. The sheer width of the gate, stretching more than 100 meters, left him wondering just how magnificent the campus beyond must be. At that moment, a car pulled up next to him. The window slid down and appeared, grinning warmly. He greeted and invited him into the car, offering to drive him to complete the admission forms. As they traveled, let out a laugh, clearly proud of the place. She remarked on how remarkable it was that University of Abilities spanned an enormous 40,000 mu, about 26 square kilometers. She pointed out that on average, every student enjoyed more than 2,600 square meters of space. She went on to explain that most people who came to visit couldn't even manage to see the entire campus in a single day. Upon hearing those words, let out a quiet sigh, realizing that witnessing the event firsthand was an entirely different experience. When they arrived at the dormitory section, gave him a card, explaining that it was both his student identification and his access pass for the dormitory. However, as Sue raised his head, he became completely motionless. He wondered if this was really a university dormitory. In his previous life, he had experienced all kinds of student housing, shared rooms with 4 people, single rooms, and even spacious 3-bedroom apartments reserved for doctoral students. However, he had never encountered villas being used as dorms before. This was something completely unfamiliar to him. Jean noticed his confusion and began to clarify that each student was assigned a villa. She mentioned that the quality of the villa depended on one's academic ranking. The better the score, the grander the home. Since he was the top student in the province, his villa was among the best, spanning more than 800 square meters. Jean reassured him he wouldn't be alone, as each villa was divided between 2 students, with one occupying each floor. Sue reflected inwardly that sharing a dorm room with another person wasn't so bad. It was certainly preferable to being alone. Having grown up as an orphan, Sue realized that what he truly longed for was the energetic feeling that came from living alongside others. After stepping inside, informed them that their admission forms had already been completed. He then began to outline a few important details they needed to understand about the place. He raised his hand, displaying 2 fingers to emphasize his points. The initial topic he addressed was the credit system, followed by an explanation of the mentor system. The story began with an introduction to credits, the most important resource at University of Abilities. Students relied on credits for every necessity, from food and gear to valuable artifacts. Without them, nothing could be obtained. Each credit was worth as much as 10,000 coins, making them extremely valuable within the campus. Explained that credits could be earned through several methods. He mentioned that a specific amount was given each year, determined by a person's rating. Because the newcomer held an S rank, they would instantly be granted 100 credits. After making this announcement, brought his hands together in a clap and called for to appear. A metal orb suddenly zipped through the sky and floated in front of the group. From it came a crisp, robotic announcement stating that the student currently had a balance of 100 credits. Took a moment to clarify that EVA was the artificial intelligence designated for each dormitory. The primary system operated from the university's central computer, and the versions present in the dorms functioned as extensions of that mainframe. Despite being subunits, each possessed an intelligence rating high enough to easily manage everyday tasks. Sue gazed in awe, amazed that even a simple subbody possessed such intelligence. She realized that the AI technology on far surpassed anything she had known in her previous world. offered a warm smile before continuing his explanation. He pointed out that the school had a mentor system, where each student had the chance to select a mentor they looked up to. If the chosen mentor accepted, that person would serve as the student's individual advisor. Sue blinked in surprise, questioning whether he had heard correctly. He wondered how someone like him, just a freshman, could possibly receive personal guidance from a mentor. Gave a determined nod, confirming the truth of the statement. Every present possessed advanced abilities and kept their own unique fighting skills hidden. The methods for training these powers were often shared only after someone officially became an apprentice. He hesitated for a moment, then explained that university employed 4 mentors specializing in the lightning element. Of these instructors, he most strongly recommended Yang, who served as the dean of the Weapon Academy. While he continued, displayed a detailed file within. The information revealed Yang, a 52-year-old who served as the dean of the Weapon Academy and possessed a 7th-rank high-tier ability. His powers centered around lightning, specifically the fierce force of blazing thunder. Yang had mastered numerous weapons, including fists, broadswords, spears, and his exceptional skill with the spear had earned him the nickname Thunder Spear. One of his most impressive feats was battling the formidable siege demon Python, an 8th-rank beast, for 3 days and nights in the wild before finally defeating it alone. 3 additional profiles became visible, 2 belonging to students from the Elemental Academy and another from the Weapon Academy who focused on mastering. Ultimately, it would be up to decide. Glanced at the panel and quietly reflected that the lightning element and spear expertise made Dean Young his strongest candidate for a. He quickly reached the Dane's home. The mentor's living space displayed a level of luxury and size that clearly surpassed anything the students lived in. A voice suddenly echoed from behind, addressing apprentice and catching their attention. The man examined him closely from head to toe, and his expression darkened with disappointment. He seemed surprised that the boy was still only an awakener and wondered aloud if he was perhaps one of the special recruits. Sue responded with a slight nod, her movement barely noticeable. Across from her, the man stared in astonishment, unable to hide his shock. In previous years, special recruits had always been at least upper 1st rank and sometimes even reached mid-tier. He couldn't fathom how, this year, they had accepted someone who had only just awakened. Yang introduced himself as a 3rd-year student at the Weapon Academy. In response, politely stated that he was a 1st-year student who had just arrived that day. Tan's eyes grew wide with surprise. He noticed how quickly the newcomer was seeking a mentor, remarking inwardly that most 1st-year students usually waited until after the freshman tournament to begin their search. He continued by describing how the tournament was a long-standing custom at the academy, typically taking place 3 or 4 days following orientation. All the mentors gathered to observe the event, eager to spot new talent. Those who impressed during the competition often found themselves in high demand, with different academies competing for their skills. Occasionally, a mentor would be so impressed that they would choose a new disciple immediately. Despite everything, he believed that even someone with special status would find it nearly impossible to meet the dean right away. Such luck would be as rare as winning the lottery, and he suspected that disappointment was the most likely outcome. Sue dipped her head in a polite nod, expressing her gratitude to Senior Tan for clarifying things. She then wondered aloud if Senior Tan, like herself, had come in search of. Tin approached the door and rapped on it, forcing a strained smile onto his face. Even though he had visited this place for several months, he was always refused entry. The constant rejection left him on the verge of surrender, yet something within him refused to let go of hope. At that moment, the enormous doors slowly swung open with a loud creak. A butler approached them, a pleasant smile on his face. He informed the guests that teacher was expecting them inside and invited them to come along as he led the way. Tan Ming Yang stopped in his tracks, stunned by what he saw. It struck him as odd. Whenever he had visited before, the butler greeted him with a frosty attitude. But this time the butler welcomed him warmly, and even Yang himself was waiting inside. Tan Ming Yang wondered if this might finally be his lucky day. A short while after, the butler escorted the group into an impressive and spacious living room. Looked up, instantly struck by an intense and formidable presence that seemed to press down on him. He realized that such strength could only belong to Yang, the renowned head of the Weapon Academy, who was famous for his title, Thunder Spear, and respected as a high-ranking expert of the 7th tier. Yang broke the silence, his tone steady but edged with intensity. He identified, recalling that director had already informed him about this newcomer. Without waiting for a response, Yang instructed to follow, promising to lead him to the training hall.
Yang guided up to the second floor, mentioning that he had reviewed the footage from entrance exam. He noted that his abilities in combat were remarkable, and that his spear techniques had already reached a high level. Before proceeding any further, the speaker expressed a strong desire to witness the Purple Heaven Divine Thunder, the S-Class ability, firsthand. Gave a nod of agreement. With his eyes shutting gently, he began to let the thunder inside him flow out at a gradual pace. In the following moment, bolts of electricity burst from his form, sending sharp flashes slicing through the atmosphere. Yang's eyes grew wide with surprise as he realized he was witnessing the legendary Purple Heaven Divine Thunder, a power ranked at the S-Class level. He personally handled the powerful A-Class Thunder, but understood that no amount of talent could close the distance between A-Class and the superior S-Class. Observing the boy, he realized that with the right training, the young man's potential could one day exceed his own. Yang considered this carefully, his tone grave as he acknowledged that with such remarkable talent, accepting the other as his disciple would be an easy decision. The character made it clear that they had gained both allies and adversaries over time. They warned that anyone choosing to follow them would inevitably attract attention from both sides, and there was a real possibility that some enemies might target the newcomer as well. Despite these risks, the character wanted to know if the other person truly intended to move forward. Before the elder could finish speaking, suddenly fell to one knee and loudly declared his willingness. Deep inside, he reflected on his admiration for those who had become powerful through enduring countless battles and hardships. He believed that with every enemy his teacher defeated, his teacher's strength only continued to grow. Upon witnessing his steadfast determination, Young couldn't help but laugh out loud. Pleased, he declared that from that moment forward, the newcomer would become his 32nd disciple, and notably, his very first disciple of S-Class caliber. With a swift motion of his hand, he summoned 2 manuals into existence. He then introduced the first as the most advanced training technique, known as Extreme Ability Tempering, and presented the second as his own creation, a body refinement combat art called Undying. Felt his heartbeat quicken when he received the items. In his hands was a rare technique designed to fortify the body itself. Unlike common abilities such as Lightning Dash, this method was truly invaluable. Went on to say that the training method spoke for itself, being one of just 3 elite manuals owned by their school. He emphasized that its true strength was in the undying technique. He had dedicated his entire career to developing it, and both the Thunder Hall and the Iron Bear Pavilion had officially recognized it as S-Class. Upon hearing the mention of the S-Class combat art, stood motionless, stunned by the revelation. He understood clearly that combat arts, much like special powers, were organized by rank. As the grade increased, the training became more grueling, yet the outcomes grew significantly more powerful. While many 7th-rank masters would feel accomplished just to produce a B-class technique, Yang had managed to craft an S-class skill. This wasn't an ordinary technique, but one of the most difficult, the body refinement category. His exceptional ability in martial arts was truly astonishing. Yang noticed his look of surprise and responded with a gentle smile. He explained that the Undying Thunder body technique was designed exclusively for those who could control thunder. The technique was divided into 13 levels, and every time someone moved up a level, their physical form would be renewed. However, Yang pointed out that before anything else, needed to reach the realm of a genuine ability user. He instructed the other person to leave, telling them to come back after they had mastered the Extreme Ability Tempering technique. Once they returned, he promised to help them begin building their thunder body himself. Bent low in a respectful bow, his words loud and clear as he expressed his gratitude to his teacher. Excitement welled up inside him. With a mentor to show him the way, everything seemed bent low in a respectful bow, his words loud and clear as he expressed his gratitude to his teacher. Excitement welled up as slipped from view, anticipation glimmered in Yang's eyes. He reflected on his own progress, realizing he had only managed to advance the thunder and mortal body techniques to the 10th level, with the final 3 stages still beyond his grasp. The speaker realized that, should he fail to reach the 9th rank in this life, the young boy might become the most promising candidate to demonstrate the ultimate mastery of their art. With complete perfection, this discipline could allow the human body to achieve true immortality and invincibility. Shortly afterward, the butler led away from the mansion. At the entrance, Jingming noticed Tan Mingyang remaining seated on the steps. Curious about the situation, Jingming approached and inquired about what was troubling Senior Tan. Tim exhaled with frustration, his mood soured. He glanced toward the hallway, recalling the figure who had just passed by, Senior, known among the students as a favored disciple of the dean. To earn a place, one needed to overcome Senior even when he held back most of his power and fought at only a fraction of his true ability. For Tim, that challenge felt utterly out of reach, no matter how much time passed. The other person glanced at, assuming he had failed too, and offered to share some advice based on personal experience. However, declined politely, explaining that he had already succeeded. Tan felt as if he had been struck by lightning when he heard the news. He couldn't believe it. Was it really true? He had never known the dean to accept a disciple before the freshman tournament. Tan wondered if this newcomer might actually be the principal's child. The person's appearance didn't resemble the one they expected, leaving them confused about this stranger's identity. The setting changed, placing inside his dormitory, where he practiced diligently in the secluded training room located on the upper floor. It was no surprise that this was considered a top-level training technique. The energy present was much greater than anything found in the so-called ultimate guides. He reasoned that, having already understood the technique, it would be pointless to progress slowly and cautiously. Instead, he decided to advance to the next level without hesitation. He brought up his system panel in his mind, silently requesting to allocate more points and increase his rank. Suddenly, powerful waves of energy erupted, whirling chaotically in his vicinity. As the energy invaded him, an intense burning agony tore through his body. Held his body tightly, determination flickering in his eyes as he fought to stay upright, his jaw clenched against the pain. Within seconds, a powerful surge of energy erupted from deep within him, radiating forcefully in all directions. Struggling to catch his breath, he acknowledged his achievement. He had at last surpassed the limits of an awakener and reached the level of a first-rank ability user. Bracing himself, he reached inward to summon his abilities. Sparks of lightning danced across his fingertips, snapping and glowing with intense energy. Quietly reflected on his progress, realizing why this training method was considered exceptional. He could sense a dramatic increase in his strength. His abilities now felt 4 times greater than before. Thinking back to the fierce, bloodthirsty bear he had previously encountered, he felt confident that he would no longer need a gun to defeat it. His own thunder powers would be enough to take it down. At last, realization dawned on him. It made sense now why all those with abilities longed for manuals of a higher grade. If he had used the abyssal ability training method, his blood and spirit would have risen by just 30 or 40 points. However, this time, he had gained almost 100 points in one go. The difference was staggering. He took his time, running the numbers in his head. Moving forward required just 300 points, so he decided it was wiser to keep the remaining points for learning new combat skills. He spotted the book titled Undying and immediately recognized its significance, realizing it surpassed even that of a standard training method. The text described it as an S-class technique, renowned for its incredible strength, but also notorious for consuming massive amounts of energy. He wondered silently how much time and effort would be required before he could completely master its secrets. The following morning, he made his way back to his teacher's residence. Upon learning how quickly things were moving, Yang's expression became tense with surprise. He could hardly believe the rapid pace of events. He declared that he had spent 2 decades teaching at Magic University, witnessing many gifted students over the years. Even the most talented among them needed time before they could become ability users. Yet, in less than a single day after receiving the manual, this student had already made remarkable progress. Ran his hand through his hair in embarrassment, silently admitting that swift progress might be his only strength. However, he was forced to recognize that, unlike others who had mastered the undying thunder body, he remained stalled at the very beginning. Yang went on to clarify that establishing the foundation involved using thunder beast blood as a catalyst and strengthening one's bones by channeling their own lightning through them. He emphasized that the ultimate power of the undying thunder body was determined by the quality of the beast blood chosen for the process. He explained that, because she had already made progress, he would assist her in building a solid foundation that day. Blood from a high rank was extremely uncommon, and he mentioned that he had originally obtained the blood of a Tier 7, which he had personally defeated. A subtle smile appeared on his lips as he recalled what had mentioned, that she received an S-class resource each year. Determined to secure something even more valuable, he negotiated with the principal and managed to obtain an SS-class resource for her. He produced a small container filled with deep red blood, belonging to the formidable thunderstorm dragon, an 8th-tier beast. When spotted the vial, a surge of emotion constricted his chest and made his voice quiver. He realized just how much his teacher and the principal had sacrificed on his behalf, silently vowing to repay their kindness many times over in the future. Yang gave a warm smile as he patted the other's shoulder, expressing his approval of the determination shown. He signaled that no further words were needed, urging everyone to get started without hesitation. The setting moved to the training room on the second floor, where Yang carefully drizzled blood across Spotty. Enduring the pain was necessary, as Thunderstorm acted like poison for those with low-level abilities. Experiencing this discomfort was to be expected. The narrator explained that the next step involved harnessing intense, genuine thunder to shape the foundation, and how much could be absorbed was solely up to the individual. Yang let out a thunderous roar as he released his formidable strength. Vivid red lightning, fierce and blazing like true thunder, shot forth and struck squarely in the back. Waves of unbearable pain surged through him, searing every inch of his body. Finally lost control, unleashing an angry shout that erupted from deep within him. In the living room, Ming quietly drank his tea. He remarked too that it had now been 5 days, and he found it remarkable how resilient their new junior brother had proven to be. Ming offered a faint, rueful smile as he shook his head, finding the situation hard to believe. He recalled that in the past, he had only managed to survive for 2 days, and even then it was solely because he had used the blood of a Tier 7 lower beast. He cast his gaze upward, a sense of admiration coloring his tone. In his mind, junior brother had certainly earned the 8th-tier dragon beast blood. With such a powerful S-class lightning skill, he couldn't help but anticipate the day would attain the legendary thunder body that would grant him immortality. Suddenly, a loud and angry roar echoed from above. Ming wasted no time and hurried up the stairs, wondering if his junior brother had managed to establish his foundation. As he pressed his weight against the door and tried to steal a glance inside, a sudden tightness in his chest made his breathing stop. Exuded such an intense and frightening presence that the very atmosphere seemed to quiver around him. Ming trembled as an overwhelming force pressed down on him, reminding him of standing before a fearsome predator. The sensation sent a deep chill through his entire body. Without warning, whipped his head back, and in a heartbeat, he sprang toward Ming with a swift, sudden movement. Yang shouted urging him to regain consciousness. Was startled by the loud call, stopping abruptly at the last possible moment. His complexion drained of color as fear took hold of him. He wondered anxiously what had just occurred, questioning why an overwhelming desire to wreak havoc had suddenly surged within him. Yang spoke in a somber tone, explaining that the turmoil clouding the mind was caused by the thunderstorm dragon's blood. He noted that this creature was infamous for its fierce nature, and warned that because of the individual's exceptional absorption and compatibility, the negative effects were even more intense. He offered a calm reassurance, explaining that as long as the other person's emotions remained under control, nothing bad would occur. He added that with increased strength, the side effects would eventually disappear. Upon hearing his teacher's comforting words, tension eased. Relief washed over him as he resolved to never let his feelings control his actions or lead him to make a choice he would always regret. Yang's face lit up with a wide grin as he encouraged the student to stay positive. He pointed out that the forging process had gone perfectly, and the absorption rate had reached an impressive 98%. Reflecting on his past experience with over 20 disciples learning the Undying, he recalled that the best result before had only been 92%. Now, this new achievement had set a remarkable new record. Ming's laughter rang out, his expression warm and sincere as he celebrated his junior brother's accomplishment in building the base for the immortal. He assured him that a promising future awaited on this path. Introducing himself as Ming, a top-ranked Tier 3 ability user, he encouraged his junior to seek his guidance whenever he faced difficulties in cultivation. After being introduced by his teacher, swiftly offered a respectful bow to Ming, addressing him politely as his senior. Unexpectedly, Ming reached for his phone without hesitation, admitting that he hadn't brought any other gifts. Instead, he decided to send some credits electronically as a gesture of welcome. His eyes grew wide as he saw the notification. The gift was for 200 credits, an amount he thought was far too generous. Inside, he felt completely shocked, realizing that this simple greeting present was worth a staggering $2 million. Yang let out a light laugh, brushing off the mention of 200 credits as if it were a trivial amount. He believed that, as an older student, it was his responsibility to look after those who were younger. In his mind, he hoped that one day, when the younger students became seniors themselves, they would carry on the tradition of helping their juniors in the same way. He pointed out that her foundation had already been established, and she had managed to survive 5 days without eating or drinking. He advised her to get some rest for the time being. In the morning, she was to return and practice both fist and gun skills under the guidance of senior brother. The setting changed, revealing that was back in his dormitory. He paused in his tracks, his attention caught by the sight of a person engrossed in a video game on the television. The boy spun around, a wide grin spreading across his face. He seemed to recognize the newcomer as his roommate and greeted them warmly, introducing himself as. Gave a nod, silently confirming his identity. When heard the name, excitement sparked in his eyes as he realized who stood before him, the top scorer from province. His eyes widened with astonishment when he realized he had been recognized. Straightened up, a smug look on his face, clearly enjoying his reputation as the resident expert on campus gossip. He often boasted about knowing nearly everything there was to know about this year's incoming students. Although he had never intentionally sought out details about, the buzz surrounding his arrival had been impossible to ignore. The new roommate standing before him was the mysterious top scorer from province, the so-called dark horse everyone had been talking about. With a cheerful laugh, he slung his arm around shoulders, teasingly remarking on the rumors about being from the humble city and awakening his powers during the college entrance exams. Despite what others said, he admitted that his abilities seemed far more impressive than those of an ordinary E-class. As he listened to his new roommate talk non-stop, he realized with some amusement that he had been paired with a real chatterbox. Surprisingly, he found the constant conversation comforting, since he had always disliked feeling alone, both in his past life and now. Memories from his previous life flooded his mind. He recalled spending his childhood in an orphanage, never knowing the warmth of a real family and always feeling out of place. School was manageable for him, thanks to the companionship of his friends. His fondest memories came from his college years, when he spent countless nights laughing and playing games with his roommates. Later, he went on to earn both a master's degree and a doctorate. No one would have imagined that, following an evening of heavy drinking at his graduation celebration, he would awaken to find himself in a completely unfamiliar world. Even in this new place, he remained an orphan. However, sharing his space with someone like this gave him hope that he might not have to face loneliness any longer. Continued to boast without pause, proudly mentioning his achievement of ranking within the top 20 in Sichuan province. He described himself as an A-class psychic with a Tier 1 mid-level ability. He noted that he had decided to enroll in the Tactics Academy, firmly believing that his future held the promise of leading a massive army and eradicating every beast from. Interrupted him at last, declaring that he was leaving for the Martial Hall. Hearing the mention of Martial Hall, his interest was immediately piqued. He quickly decided to join, admitting that he hadn't visited Magic University's hall before. The pair reached Thunder Hall, a facility overseen by Magic University. And Tao stared in amazement, their eyes growing wide as he drew in a sharp breath, taking in the crowded scene before them. Inside the classroom, a student celebrated their achievement, feeling proud of finally perfecting their C-class technique, Anode Flame. A heavily built man dismissed the claim with a mocking tone. confident that nothing could penetrate his tough, metallic exterior. A massive giant boasted loudly, declaring that everyone around him was worthless. As he showed off his power to grow 3 times his normal size, he threatened to smash everyone against the wall with a single swing. As the group ventured deeper into the building, Butler, the AI, began to describe their surroundings, mentioning that the spacious training hall could accommodate as many as 300 trainees simultaneously. She explained that the whole hall was constructed using C-class alloy blended with memory metal, making it resistant to any harm caused by special powers or combat skills. However, she also mentioned that anyone who wanted more privacy could reserve a separate training room. Looked around with wide-eyed amazement, silently marveling at the commotion. It seemed to him as if everyone was trying to outdo one another in volume, each person raising their voice higher than the one before. He gestured toward a line of pillars, silently wondering about their purpose as he glanced at. Explained that the board in view was called the Power Challenge Board. She went on to clarify that it displayed 5 different lists, each corresponding to a tier of ability users. She noted that anyone who managed to rank among the top 3,000 would receive 50 credits as a reward. His expression brightened with excitement. The task seemed simple enough to him. Feeling confident, he reminded himself that Magic University enrolled just around 4,000 students, so the odds were in his favor. With determination, he decided to go ahead and try. Explained to him that starting was as simple as swiping his student ID on the pillar. She also cautioned that in a full-force challenge, using any abilities or techniques was strictly forbidden. The card made a soft beep as slid it through the reader. The speakers echoed throughout the hall, announcing the arrival of Student ID 203,701,256 to the full-force challenge and encouraging the crowd to cheer for him. All attention shifted at once as a participant stepped forward to take on the challenge. Amused whispers rippled through the crowd, speculating that the contender seemed to be a mid-level tier, probably a freshman. Excitement grew, with many anticipating the entertainment that was sure to follow. Beneath the weight of countless staring eyes, even, who was usually the most talkative, grew anxious. He realized that far too many people were watching him, and he couldn't afford to make a fool of himself in front of them all. Clenching his jaw in determination, he let out a fierce shout and launched his fist forward in a powerful punch. His fist struck the machine with a forceful impact. The measurement displayed a powerful 476 kilograms, a result that impressed everyone. Upon learning this, finally relaxed, feeling the tension ease from his body. He thought to himself that this achievement was quite impressive and felt confident that ranking among the top 3,000 would be easily within reach. The broadcast delivered harsh news, stating that the rank was lower than 100,000. Stared in disbelief, his eyes wide with shock. He couldn't believe it. His rank was over 100,000. He remembered that Magic University enrolled only 4,000 students. Clarified in a steady voice that the rankings represented all students throughout the university's century-long history, not merely those enrolled now. Hearing this, stiffened, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over him. He silently cursed the situation. The reason for the stares became clear. They were all anticipating his downfall. Laughter filled the whole hall as students reacted to the number. Many found it unbelievable, over 100,000. Some joked that even they hadn't been so clueless as freshmen. Others pointed at the embarrassed newcomer, whose face had turned bright red, and agreed that he was clearly new to all of this. Noticing the discomfort on his friend's face, offered kind words, reassuring him not to feel bad since psychic abilities were his real strength, not physical skills. Managed a weak smile, expressing his gratitude for the encouragement. He then shifted the focus, suggesting that being stronger should give it a try instead. As soon as gave a nod of agreement, burst out with excitement, urging him to do his best and reminding everyone that their dormitory's reputation depended on his performance. The announcement echoed once more throughout the room, greeting student ID 203,701,204, and inviting everyone present to applaud and encourage him for the full-force challenge. A murmur rippled through the crowd as a new opponent stepped forward. Observers quickly assessed him, noting that he appeared even less impressive than the last. Judging by his stance, he seemed to be at the lower end of Tier 1. Some doubted whether he could even manage a 400-kilogram lift. Yet, as his name was announced, it struck a chord of recognition among a few onlookers. Jimming gazed at his panel, reflecting on his recent progress. He realized he had reached a new tier, emerged victorious, and dedicated 5 days and nights to solidifying his foundation. The character wondered about the extent of their newfound power, deciding that a single punch would reveal the answer. Extended his arm, pouring all his remaining energy into the motion as determination filled his mind. In a sudden burst of energy, he drove his fist into the machine, striking it with such power that the resulting crash echoed like thunder.